Well, thanks for joining us again in this Hard Love small group series. I hope you're enjoying the series. I know it's been challenging for me, and it's been really good in our life as well. And so we're really glad that you would join us and be a part of this. So kind of diving in here, on the weekend we talked about how the person that we've given our heart to, oftentimes we bring some baggage into the relationship whenever we start. And so we've given our heart to this person, and usually we end up with trouble because of the baggage that we brought in. And so how do you think that that person that we make that deepest vow to, we ends up being the person that we're so upset with in life? What have you seen maybe in our relationship, or what's your thought on that?
Yeah, well, they say you hurt the ones you love the most, and I think that's true, and I think people say that because it's true in marriage. Because when someone that you love, like when I love you, and you say something critical or you do something that feels like rejection, it hurts me more because I care more about your feelings, and I want you to respond well to me because I love you. And so it hurts worse than if just some ignorant guy on the street said something critical to me. I don't really care what he thinks, but I care what you think.
Yeah, and so what's interesting is in the relationship that you choose, whether you make a vow or you're deep into this relationship, what's interesting about that is it's that relationship that begins to surface what you came into the relationship with, the baggage that we came in with. And it begins to do that more than any other kind of relationship because we're so committed to that. And so we end up upset at those things. And so our baggage is really the thing that in our romantic kind of relationship that makes that come out. And so there's some specific things that happen like that cause that to surface. And I was thinking about that on a personal level, and of course you and I have worked through a whole lot of this, and I think maybe even sometimes it's still we have to dabble in it a little bit. But when I was in high school, I had a relationship with this girl, and I thought she was great. We were getting along fine, and so her church was going on a trip, and so she invited me to go with them. And so we loaded in a car with a bunch of friends, and we drove to Dallas and went to Six Flags. And when we went through the gate of Six Flags, we kind of made a right and went around, and just before we turned our first corner, she stopped me, and I turned around, and she said, hey, I want to break up. And so we broke up right then at Six Flags. Well, the problem was this was a 3-day trip. And so here I was in Dallas with a whole other church that I didn't know anybody but her, and that was just devastating. It was lonely, it was hurtful, very disappointing, and I couldn't leave. I was with them. I had no transportation of my own. And so, for a couple days I wandered around Six Flags by myself, just kind of broken. But there was something that happened on the way home. So here I am in the car with her and her friends, and I'm on the way home riding there, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm leaning up against the window, and I'm looking out the window. And while I'm riding along, I'm just hurting, and I'm angry, and I say inside, I will never let another woman hurt me like that. And I made a vow when I was 16 years old. So when you and I started dating and ultimately got married, I brought that piece of baggage into our marriage, and you knew nothing about it. In fact, what's interesting is I knew it had happened, but I didn't even remember saying, I'm never going to let that happen again. And so my vow that I made, I spoke this, and I was living it out, that I was never going to let another woman get close to me, because if she got close to me, she's going to hurt me too. So I brought that into our marriage. So you know that now. We've discovered that along the way. But some things started to surface in our relationship related to that. So what do you remember about that from kind of your side?
I remember when we were dating, I just thought you were really mysterious, and I thought that was interesting. It was kind of challenging to me, that I wanted to get to know you because there was obviously layers upon layers of a person I wanted to get to know. But after we were married, and I knew that you loved me, but I would bare my soul to you in a conversation, and you would listen, but it wasn't a reciprocal thing. You were not saying, oh, I understand, I feel that way too. Or I would ask you, how does that make you feel when that happens? And you would be like, I don't know. and you just wouldn't open up. And I am a very inquisitive person. I'm very relational, so that was driving me crazy. That you would never really open up. I just felt like we scratch the surface, but never really get down to it.
Yeah, and I probably just needed to be smacked in the head.
I thought about it.
But what's so interesting about that is you would ask me questions like that or tell me something about you, and I knew you wanted me to say something back, but I had made this vow that I'm going to put up this fence or this wall, and you can't come in here. And so I'm going to let you get this close to me, and then I'm not going to let you get any closer, because I remember what happens when you get in here is you have this incredible power to hurt me when you get inside here. So I didn't care if I was married to you or if it was just somebody I worked with or somebody I knew. As it related to women, all women had to stay on the outside of that outer shell for me, because I was afraid of what might happen if you got in there, because it had happened before. And I think that really relates to what we talked about on the weekend about what Solomon said in Proverbs, where he said, above everything else, guard your heart. Now, as a 16-year-old, that's tough to know how to do, to guard your heart. But what I did that day is I let something in my heart, which was a vow, by saying, I'm never going to let this happen again. And so what I was doing is I was fortifying my heart from any other pain to ever happen. And I think there's a big difference between sealing your heart off and guarding your heart. And so that for me means guarding my heart from things that I might vow I'll never let happen or I don't want to happen, because that went way deep into our relationship. In fact, that was kind of the beginning of so many of the problems that we had. Is we were married, we had kids together, we had built a life together, but you didn't know me because I was doing this. I wouldn't actually let you know me. And so our ability to feel is really determined by the condition of our heart. And so I couldn't feel what you needed me to feel, and I couldn't release some of that stuff as well going into that. So then we started to run into some problems over that.
Yes, we did. And I knew that there was something going on. He had pulled away even more. You had, I would ask you things like, what is going on? I feel a distance between us. And you were like, I don't know, must be you. I mean, we would discuss it, but it would never get down to it. And we were drifting further and further apart. And there came a time when I knew that I didn't really know you, and you were keeping a secret, basically.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that is at that time I didn't even really know what the secret was. I just knew you would ask me questions, and just by asking me pointed, direct questions, it made me angry, or I got angry about it, because I had this wall up and I had a secret that I didn't even remember what it was. But I had carried it in. And what's so interesting about this to me is that this surfaced all along the way, but it really got ugly about year 8 through 10, somewhere in there, where this just came to a head, because what happened is by keeping you out, I needed that. Those feelings of love and acceptance and relationship, I needed that. But I wasn't allowing it in our relationship. And so I started finding that in my work and with people I worked with. And it was safe there, and all of a sudden it didn't feel safe at home because you asked too many pointed questions, and so I began to distance myself from you. And that all started from not guarding my heart, or knowing even how to guard my heart whenever I was young. And so when we would bump up against each other and everything would come flying out, it was just ugly, and I thought it was you. And you were pretty sure it was me. I just didn't realize that in most cases it probably was me as well.
Well, and I was nagging and digging and trying to force you into conversation, trying to, get you to tell me what is going on. And it was not in a way that would draw you out. It was more of an accusatory way.
Right.
And why aren't you telling me what's going on? And I remember a particular argument that we had, and you had basically said to me, I don't know what I feel, because you had not even allowed yourself to dig deep enough to know that, because you were kind of like, I'm shutting off my feelings now. And that was probably the worst part of what we had gone through in our marriage, was that time where you were like, I don't feel anything. You didn't want to feel.
Yeah, and what I didn't understand was I felt threatened. That's really what it was. Is I felt threatened. For my heart's safety, and you were that threat, and so I was fighting back at that. But I didn't know how to say, I feel threatened whenever you say, what do you think about that? Or what do you, how do you feel about that? That was a threat. It was it felt like a direct attack on me, but it was because of what I had put around my heart and the hardness of my heart there. And so, it's so hard though when, we now can go, I feel threatened by that, or I feel, frustrated, or I feel, jealous of that, or it's hard now to not go, well, you should just stop feeling that way, right? And just telling each other, stop
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah, I don't know why you feel that way. That's not how I'm reacting, or why are you responding that way? That's not what I said. But I know whenever we did finally start working through that issue and we started getting better, it was because we were able to say, I feel insecure. When you don't tell me what's going on with you, it makes me wonder, is there something wrong? And I would use statements like, I feel insecure, I feel like I'm not enough for you. And then when you learn to open up, you would say, well, actually, this is how I feel about you. But it took a little time for us to get there.
Well, and it's certainly still a work in progress for me. So we talked on the weekend about one of the best things that you can do when somebody says, I feel threatened, is to say, thank you so much for telling me that, but then say nothing more. Because there's nothing else to say, because all it is it's an observation, and that has nothing to do with you. You were not a threat, right? I felt threatened. It's not like you were threatening me. I just felt that way. And so I think there's something there is for the other person just to that get quiet. Don't say anything outside of, well, thank you for telling me that.
Right.
And then isn't that weird? Because as I learn to say, this feels, I feel defensive when you ask me those things. That it can easily be like an indictment on you. Like for you to say, I don't feel wanted, when you say, I felt like I had done something wrong, like that was an indictment against me for what I had done. But in actuality, what you're telling me is, well, that's how I feel. And my response needs to be, well, thanks for telling me that.
Right, because
And in silence.
once we say our feelings are okay, and it's okay that is the feeling that I'm feeling. It may not be true, it may not be what you intended, but that's how I feel. And if we try to shut each other down and say, well, you shouldn't feel that way, that person will stop sharing, and I know that's what had happened a lot in our early days. And I think we've learned now to say, well, thank you for telling me how you feel. I'm going to think about that. And going away and letting them process it, and you yourself process it, and then revisiting that. Because I think if we don't ever come back to it, we're just left hanging with all these uncomfortable feelings. And sometimes that means going and talking to somebody else, having a mediator. If the feelings are very strong and high emotion, and you cannot understand why that person would feel that way, that's why we go and talk to somebody else. We get some help.
Well, I think it's a hard thing to learn. I maybe because I'm a guy, I think it's tougher for guys to learn this. It seems like I see women getting this much quicker than I did or do, and maybe even other guys do. But that not taking those feelings that you have as a criticism against me, and that's a really difficult thing, because then all of a sudden I'm defensive because I feel like you're attacking me, and if you're attacking me, you're a threat, and all of a sudden the wall wants to go up, and it's just this crazy cycle that happens over and over again. And so learning to understand that, okay, that is just how you feel. It's not a criticism of me. And I think that's been a difficult thing for me as a guy, as a husband, and then with the baggage I brought into our relationship, to be able to accept that you're not criticizing me. You actually are giving me a gift of telling you how you feel.
Yes, and it does feel like a gift. And I know anytime, and I think most women would agree with this, when our husbands or the person we love opens up to us and shares their soul, that is a gift, and it should be treasured. It should not be diminished, and it shouldn't be brushed over. Just sit and enjoy the fact that they're telling something, even if it's something kind of painful. It's still a gift, and that is true in all relationships with our children or with our parents. If we can allow people to express their heart and what's really going on inside of them, then we can understand them better, which brings us closer together and brings more intimacy.
Well, the fact is whatever is inside of you is what's going to come out of you. And most things were already in you when you came into that relationship, and that romantic relationship is just what's drawing it out. And so you need a plan on how to deal with that, and that's really what we talked about in the weekend, about identifying that, naming it, calling it what it is, and then saying, God, I'm going to need your help to deal with that. And so my question is what's your plan? You know, what plan do you have for your relationship to be able to deal with all of these emotions? Because as we mentioned, guys, it's not just frustration and anger. There's a whole gamut of emotions that we need to learn to identify, call it what it is, and know how to deal with it, and be willing to tell the person that we love that this is what we're really going through. Now, that's kind of a tall order, and this is kind of all packed in small, but that's like a lifetime of a relationship, but I know you can do it, and I hope you'll go to work thinking through what that is and how to actually accomplish that as you learn how to feel it. Well, thanks for joining us. I hope you'll have a great discussion with your group. I think these would be great discussions with that person that you love as well, and I hope that goes really well for you. We'll see you next time.